Hi, I'm Ursula Wake.
I'm Jon Atack, and this is Lyrical Wax.
And today we are talking about ballads. We have 5 ballads to read and 5 to recommend. And one of the reasons we're doing it like that is that ballads by their nature are pretty long. And so 10 might be overstretching it a little bit. There are all sorts of things that can be said about ballads. And I've looked at various different sources about how to explain what a ballad is or the history of the ballad or whatever. And there are 2 things basically that everybody agrees on. 1, a ballad tells a story. And 2, a ballad has a fairly simple rhythm and rhyme. There is always a rhyme and a fairly straightforward, simple rhythm. Everything else is not necessarily agreed on, so I'm going to leave it just there. I've only ever written one ballad, which I've written very recently, before to sort of see if I could, because I was talking about ballads and in another context. So the content of ballads is very often, the kind of stories tend to come into a fairly small number of types. They centre around some kind of incident. Some of them are kind of supernatural, ghoulish, grisly things, encounters with demons, sometimes encounters with fairy creatures, etc. Some of them are about love and being scorned, adultery, subsequent murder, crimes of passion, etc. Some are about treachery of the powerful against the poor folks. And the first one is one of those in a way. So it's written by me. It's about, you may be aware that in the UK recently, in recent years, there has been something going on called Brexit. And in the lead up to this, in the lead up to the referendum, and there was a lot of, it's been such a divisive issue. It's a massive issue still in the UK. And there was, propaganda is always problematic, and famously for a lot of people in this country, there was one particular kind of propaganda in the lead up to the referendum that was very problematic. Which is what this ballad is about. The Ballad of the Sideman, Mr. Farage. The North and the South and the rich and the poor were split over Brussels and whether to trust. So they were given a vote, but they never foresaw a lie on the side of a bus. The main man always thought he would win, so he kept on keeping on and made no fuss, while the side man saw a new career begin and dreamt up a lie for the side of a bus. On every front page the people found the side man's picture and smiled or cursed. He gathered supporters all around to paint his lie on the side of a bus. On the day the main man lost the vote and disappeared to gather dust, he strode off humming to forget about the lie on the side of the bus. The side man stayed on the scene and said the will of the people was fair and just, and ignored he had fooled them and reeled them in with his lie on the side of the bus. Well, days went by and weeks went by and months and years they fell to rust, till the papers were signed and, oh, we're all living now with that lie on the side of a bus.
Brilliant. Really good. And he's my other channel. You can see him advertising on it, and he's using the slogan of Brexit, "Take back control," and he's now a financial advisor, telling people what to do with their money. I'd just like to point out that he was, I think he still is a member of the European Parliament, or we've now left. So
no, he
didn't get back in the last time last year. But for years he was there. And he was on the Agriculture and Fisheries Commission, and that's a major issue that he's talked about often, how our fisheries, our territorial waters are taken away from us. And I was told that of 300 meetings of the Commission, he'd attended 6. That's how much he cares about the actual issue.
Yeah.
Not one of my favourite people.
No,
No.
not one of mine. So the lie on the side of the bus was a fact that had been invented that was on the side of various buses, as well as billboards, but a lie on the side of a bus has a ring to it, and they were on the side of buses, £35 million a week.
350.
Oh, yes, sorry, 350. £350 million per week will go to the NHS instead of to the European Union if we leave. And it's bullshit.
It's a fictitious number which was apparently approved by Dominic Cummings, who is no longer Boris Johnson's senior advisor.
So that's I'll leave that now. But that was a political ballad.
Yes, and a very good political ballad, if I may say so. It's really nicely done. I thought we were going to do things like Eskimo Nell and the good ship Venus when you said ballads, but apparently not. This is the Ballad of Robert Moore and Betty Coltrane, which was a song recorded by Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds.
Yeah, so this is from the 90s. So this is very much a polygamy and murder ballad.
We should have done Jack of Hearts by Bob Dylan. I hadn't even thought about it. Too late now. So they're now going to recommend 6 and make it a top 11.
Yes,
but Jack
why
of
not?
Hearts, brilliant ballad. Absolutely wonderful. The Ballad of Robert Moore and Betty Coltrane. There was a thick-set man with frog eyes who was standing by the door, and a little bald man with wingnut ears was waiting in the car. Well, Robert Moore passed the frog-eyed man as he walked into the bar, and Betty Coltrane, she jumped under the table. "What's your pleasure?" asked the barman. He had a face like boiled meat. "There's a girl called Betty Coltrane that I've come to see. And I ain't seen that girl round here for more than a week." And Betty Coltrane, she hid beneath the table. Well, then in came a sailor with mermaids tattooed on his arms, followed by the man with the wingnut ears who was waiting in the car. Well, Robert Moore sensed trouble. He'd seen it coming from afar. And Betty Coltrane, she gasped beneath the table. Well, the sailor said, "I'm looking for my wife. They call her Betty Coltrane." The frog-eyed man said, "That can't be. That's my wife's maiden name." And the man with the wingnut ears said, "Hey, I married her back in Spain." And Betty Coltrane crossed herself beneath the table. Well, Robert Moore stepped up and said, "That woman is my wife," and he drew a silver pistol and a wicked bowie knife, and he shot the man with the wingnut ears straight between the eyes. And Betty Coltrane, she moaned under the table. The frog-eyed man jumped at Robert Moore, who stabbed him in the chest, and as Mr. Frog-Eyes died, he said, "Betty, you're the girl that I loved best." The sailor pulled a razor. Robert blasted it to bits. "And Betty, I know you're under the table." "Well, have no fear," said Robert Moore. "I do not want to hurt you. Never a woman didna love me half as much as you. You are the blessed sun, girl, and you are the sacred moon." And Betty shot his legs out from under the table. Well, Robert Moore went down heavy with a crash upon the floor, and over to his thrashing body Betty Coltrane she did crawl. She put the gun to the back of his head and pulled the trigger once more, and blew his brains out all over the table. Well, Betty stood up and shook her head and waved the smoke away, said, "I'm sorry, Mr. Barman, to leave your place this way." As she emptied out their wallets, she said, "I'll collect my severance pay." And then she winked and threw $1 on the table. I think I married her at some point.
Well done for surviving.
Yeah, it hasn't shot my legs out from under me yet.
All of these are in reverse chronological order. Seeing as I thought, well, we'll start off with mine. We started off with two relatively short ones so that they're in their entirety. That was how that ordering started off, because then the others are going to be partial because they are longer ballads. So this next one, going a little bit further back in time, is by Bertolt Brecht, and was written, it's another political one, it's called The Ballad of the Reichstag Fire. So Bertolt Brecht is a German poet, was a German poet, very strong anti-Nazi poems. He was far left, and a lot of his poems are political. The Reichstag, the German parliament, shortly after Hitler came to power, the Reichstag burned, not entirely to the ground, but there was a fire, and it was blamed on the communists. And then it became clear that it wasn't the communists, that actually it wasn't anybody protesting against Hitler coming to power, that actually the chances were there were a lot of bits of evidence that showed that it was probably them, that the communists, this kid, this boy, had been framed, and that actually it was a piece of propaganda to enable the Nazis to then say, well, we've got to clamp down. We've got to clamp down on people who we can't trust, on anybody who isn't one of us. So that's the story of the Reichstag Fire, and this is the Ballad of the Reichstag Fire. So it's, as well as the Reichstag, so that's a German parliament, a couple of other things to explain. There's a reference to the Spree, which is the river that runs through Berlin. There's a reference to the SPD, which was the Socialist Party at the time. And there's a reference to the SA, which was, so Sturmabteilung. So they were the paramilitary wing to the Nazis.
The brown shirts.
The brown shirts, they were famously very violent intimidators, and they played a significant role in Hitler coming to power. So those are references it's worth knowing. So I've shortened this, but it is still quite long. But this is The Ballad of the Reichstag Fire by Bertolt Brecht. 13 years the drummer ranted that the commune had to fall, all the crimes that they'd committed, though there'd been no crimes at all. Little drummer boys started to grumble, something's got to give, it's time. Those benighted commie criminals just won't commit a crime. By the Spree one winter's morning they heard the Führer declare, there's a Reichstag fire in the offing, I can feel it in the air. On that fateful Monday evening flames leapt high above the town, and the crime screamed out to heaven, the culprits? Nowhere to be found. Then a hapless youth was taken, in trousers of rough cord in his hand, and bound in linen was a Communist party card. From the youth they drew a confession. Yes, the commies pulled the strings. They had paid him, but first they'd thrashed him, and a lot of nastier things. And the boy with lips so pallid, he confessed quite eagerly, he was nothing but a puppet of the radical SPD. Yet he'd left the communists, let his membership expire, so that many people doubted that he'd really laid the fire. To set fire to such a building would take at least a dozen men, for it burned in 12 separate places and was largely built of stone. In amongst those dozen bonfires stood a dozen SA men, and they pointed with blackened fingers at the sallow youth again. Then we heard the Reichstag president had sent all his staff away, and himself was not in residence when the Reichstag burned that day. So why did you, Mr. President, send your guards off into town on the very self-same Monday when your Reichstag burned down? If we could call him to the hearing, there'd be much he could not refute. But you can't cross-question Goering. He's the one who prosecutes. With no proper legal process, very soon the judgment came. Mr. Goering's diagnosis? The communists were to blame. And that night in bloody February, early before the light of dawn, anyone who'd ever been a communist was locked up or else gunned down. In Berlin that winter's evening, 1933 the year, and before you could say Hermann, the Reichstag was on fire. 'Twas a man called Oberfohren was the first to sing this song, but before he'd hardly started, they came and shot him down. I think that works really, considering that's been translated, and a ballad, as we've said, has and as lots of people will know, has such a strong sense of rhythm and rhyme. I think to translate it and render it so well is very good.
Yep.
Quite a task. So let me just give a shout out to the translator, Tom Kuhn and David Constantine. Well done, guys.
Yeah, good work. So this is an anonymous ballad, the Ballad of Barbara Allen. There are many versions of it. It's been recorded by Joan Baez, Art Garfunkel, and Dolly Parton. You must dig out her version. Changing a word here and there. But the original is actually hundreds of years old, your notes say. And I believe you. So the Ballad of Barbara Allen. In Scarlet Town where I was born, there was a fair maid dwelling, made every youth cry well away. Her name was Barbara Allen. All in the merry month of May, when green buds they were swelling, young Jemmy Grove on his deathbed lay, for love of Barbara Allen. He sent his man unto her then, to the town where she was dwelling. You must come to my master, dear, if your name be Barbara Allen, for death is printed on his face, and all his heart is stealing. Then haste away to comfort him, O lovely Barbara Allen. So slowly, slowly she came up, and slowly she came nigh him, and all she said, when there she came, Young man, I think you're dying. He turned his face unto her straight, with deadly sorrow sighing, O lovely maid, come pity me, I'm on my deathbed lying. If on your deathbed you do lie, what needs the tale you're telling? I cannot keep you from your death. Farewell, said Barbara Allen. When he was dead and laid in grave, her heart was struck with sorrow. O mother, mother, make my bed, for I shall die tomorrow. Hard-hearted creature him to slight, who loved me so dearly. Oh, that I had been more kind to him when he was live and near me. She, on her deathbed as she lay, begged to be buried by him, and sore repented of the day that she did e'er deny him. Farewell, she said, ye virgins all, and shun the fault I fell in. Henceforth take warning by the fall of cruel Barbara Allen.
There you go. She got a comeuppance, didn't she?
Yeah, kind of weird, really, isn't it? So, when some stranger decides that they're in love with you and they're going to die for love of you, and they call you out, and what choice do you have, really? I think she, even going there, that she'd really overstepped and done more than he deserved, frankly. So, I think don't follow this path at all. You know.
Yeah. He was. That was
something wrong with the bloke.
Yeah,
definitely.
But it was a bit harsh. Well, what you telling me for?
Yeah.
I'm dying for love of you.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Oh,
it's probably what I'd say, though. So, can't falter there.
So, the fifth one we're going to read from, you can't have an episode on ballads without the Rime of the Ancient Mariner by Samuel Taylor Coleridge, which I'm going to read from this beautiful little portrait of Coleridge there, the Poems of Coleridge. So it's one of those poems that's an incredibly famous title, The Rime of the Ancient Mariner. And I think it's a lot more famous than most of the content. So I'm going to read, it is incredibly long, I think 625 lines. So
just like TV set.
and there will be versions of the full thing that you can listen to. If you don't want to read it, if you prefer to hear it, because ballads are fantastic for speak. They're intended. They were never. Most of them historically were never written down. They were meant to be learnt, and it was part of an oral tradition to start with. So there is something about hearing them that's quite special, I think. So there are versions, full versions of the Rime of the Ancient Mariner. A lot of people know there's something about an albatross in there. And a lot of people don't know quite what happened with the albatross, and some people know a detail about it being hung round a sailor's neck, and possibly not an awful lot more. So the story of the Rime of the Ancient Mariner is the ancient mariner, ancient sailor, so very old man, is destined to walk the land, telling his tale of the lesson he learned on a long voyage. And he sort of is compelled to tell this, but then actually tells it in such a way, and we find this out at the beginning, tells it in such a way that whoever he's telling it to can't help but listen. So that's quite a nice little symbiotic thing going on there, I think. So the ship he and his crew are on gets stuck in still weather without wind, can't go anywhere. And an albatross appears. And as the albatross appears and hangs round the ship for being fed, and the sailors like having this albatross around, the wind picks up and takes the ship on. Then, and we're not told why, the mariner shoots with a crossbow the albatross and still descends again, and his crew are furious with him. What have you done? That albatross was helping us out, mate. What are you doing? So they're furious with him, and they hang this dead albatross round his neck. As
you do.
As punishment, and to show their disgust at his behaviour and their fury at him. Then arrives a ghost ship with Death and her sidekick, and they're playing a game of dice. And as a result of the game of dice, all the crew die, and just die on the deck, are left on the deck, except the ancient mariner. He is stared at by these dead bodies. So then, while the ship is stuck, he's noticing, among nothing else to notice, he starts noticing the creatures in the water, and starts to notice how wonderful they are, and starts to realise what he's done and how awful it was to shoot the albatross. He gets home, and that's when he's destined to walk the land, telling the story of the lesson he learned. And that comes towards a little stanza towards the end. So that's the story. Also, quite soon in, we have one of my favourite words that just appears. I saw it and I thought, what? Eftsoons is a word that is used.
Eftsoons.
Listen out for it. And it means, it comes from the Old English, John, apparently, eft sona, and it means soon afterwards, or once again, or anew. That's what it means. Eftsoons. See how many conversations you can fit that into today.
Abnd inward.
Yeah. The Rime of the Ancient Mariner. It is an ancient mariner, and he stoppeth one of three. By thy long grey beard and glittering eye, now wherefore stopp'st thou me? The bridegroom's doors are open wide, and I am next of kin. The guests are met, the feast is set, mayst hear the merry din. He holds him with his skinny hand. There was a ship, quoth he. Hold off, unhand me, grey-beard loon. Eftsoons his hand dropped he. He holds him with his glittering eye. The wedding guest stood still, and listens like a 3 years' child. The mariner hath his will. The wedding guest sat on a stone, he cannot choose but hear, and thus spake on that ancient man, the bright-eyed mariner. The ship was cheered, the harbour cleared, merrily did we drop, below the kirk, below the hill, below the lighthouse top. The sun came up upon the left, out of the sea came he, and he shone bright, and on the right went down into the sea. And now the storm blast came, and he was tyrannous and strong. He struck with his o'ertaking wings and chased us south along. And now there came both mist and snow, and it grew wondrous cold, and ice mast high came floating by, as green as emerald. The ice was here, the ice was there, the ice was all around. It cracked and growled and roared and howled like noises in a swound. At length did cross an albatross. Through the fog it came, as if it had been a Christian soul, we hailed it in God's name. It ate the food it ne'er had ate, and round it flew. The ice did split with a thunder fit, the helmsman steered us through. And a good south wind sprung up behind, the albatross did follow, and every day for food or play came to the mariner's hollow. God save the ancient mariner from the fiends that plague thee thus. Why look'st thou so? With my crossbow I shot the albatross. And I had done a hellish thing, and it would work 'em woe. For all averred I had killed the bird that made the breeze to blow. Ah, wretch, they said they, the bird to slay that made the breeze to blow. Day after day we stuck, nor breath nor motion, as idle as a painted ship upon a painted ocean. Water, water everywhere, and all the boards did shrink. Water, water everywhere, nor any drop to drink. And every tongue through utter drought was withered at the root. We could not speak, no more than if we had been choked with soot. Oh, well a day, what evil looks had I from old and young. Instead of the cross, the albatross about my neck was hung. There passed a weary time, each throat was parched and glazed each eye. A weary time, how glazed each weary eye, when looking westward, I beheld a something in the sky. With throats unslaked, with black lips baked, we could nor laugh nor wail. Through utter drought all dumb we stood, I bit my arm, I sucked the blood, and cried, "A sail! A sail!" "See, see," I cried, "she tacks no more. Hither to work us weal, without a breeze, without a tide, she steadies with upright keel." Alas, thought I, and my heart beat loud, how fast she nears and nears. Are those her sails that glance in the sun like restless gossamers? Are those her ribs through which the sun did peer as through a grate? And is that woman all her crew? Is that a death, and are there two? Is death that woman's mate? Her lips were red, her looks were free, her locks were yellow as gold. Her skin was white as leprosy, the nightmare life in death was she, who thicks man's blood with cold. 4 times 50 living men, and I heard nor sigh nor groan. With a heavy thump, a lifeless lump, they dropped down one by one. The souls did from their bodies fly, they fled to bliss or woe, and every soul, it passed me by like the whiz of my crossbow. I fear thee, ancient mariner, I fear thy skinny hand, and thou art long and lank and brown, as is the ribbed sea sand. I fear thee and thy glittering eye, and thy skinny hand so brown. Fear not, thou wedding guest, this body dropped not down. Alone, alone, all alone, alone on a wide, wide sea. And never a saint took pity on my soul in agony. The many men so beautiful, and they all dead did lie, and 1,000 slimy things lived on, and so did I. Beyond the shadow of the ship I watched the water snakes. They moved in tracks of shining white, and when they reared the elfish light fell off in hoary flakes. Within the shadow of the ship I watched their rich attire. Blue, glossy green and velvet black, they coiled and swam, at every track was a flash of golden fire. Oh, happy living things, no tongue their beauty might declare. A spring of love gushed from my heart, and I blessed them unaware. Sure my kind saint took pity on me, and I blessed them unaware. The self-same moment I could pray, and from my neck so free the albatross fell off, and sank like lead into the sea. Oh, sleep, it is a gentle thing, beloved from pole to pole. To Mary Queen the praise be given, she sent the gentle sleep from heaven that slid into my soul. The upper air burst into life, and 100 fire flags sheen. To and fro they were hurried about, and to and fro and in and out the wan stars danced between. The loud wind never reached the ship, yet now the ship moved on. Beneath the lightning and the moon the dead men gave a groan. They groaned, they stirred, they all uprose, nor spake nor moved their eyes. It had been strange, even in a dream, to have seen those dead men rise. The helmsman steered, the ship moved on, yet never a breeze up blew. The mariners all gan to work the ropes where they were wont to do. They raised their limbs like lifeless tools. We were a ghastly crew. I fear thee, ancient mariner. Be calm, thou wedding guest. 'Twas not those souls that fled in pain, which to their courses came again, but a troop of spirits blest. For when it dawned, they dropped their arms and clustered round the mast. Sweet sounds rose slowly through their mouths and from their bodies passed. Around flew each sweet sound, then darted to the sun. Slowly the sounds came back again, now mixed, now one by one. And now 'twas all like all instruments, now like a lonely flute, and now it is an angel's song that makes the heavens be mute. Till noon we quietly sailed on, yet never a breeze did breathe. Slowly and smoothly went the ship, moved onward from beneath. Under the keel 9 fathom deep from the land of mist and snow, the spirit slid, and it was he that made the ship to go. The sails at noon left off their tune, and the ship stood still also. Oh, shrieve me, holy man. The hermit crossed his brow. So I needed to say, I'll start that again, but there's a lot of story, and then we get to a point where he comes across a hermit. Oh, shrieve me, holy man, the hermit crossed his brow. Say quick, quoth he, I bid thee say, what manner of man art thou? Forthwith this frame of mine was wrenched with a woeful agony, which forced me to begin my tale, and then it left me free. Since then, at an uncertain hour, that agony returns, until my ghastly tale is told, this heart within me burns. I pass like night from land to land, I have strange power of speech. That moment that his face I see, I know the man that must hear me. To him my tale I teach. He prayeth best who loveth best all things both great and small. For the dear God who loveth us, he made and loveth all. The mariner whose eye is bright, whose beard with age is hoar, is gone. And now the wedding guest turned from the bridegroom's door. He went like one that hath been stunned, and is of sense forlorn. A sadder and a wiser man he rose the morrow morn. That's the rhyme of the Ancient Mariner.
Wow. There we go. Water, water everywhere.
That's right. I didn't know until very recently, a really recent reading of this, that actually that's where the phrase comes from.
I didn't until this very moment.
Yes. But I found it, the first time I came across this was in a very big book with pictures, amazing illustrations by Gustave Doré. And I really enjoyed the etchings, but not the rhyme. The story didn't really do anything for me at the time. But actually, there's all sorts that I have started to really enjoy ballads and the simple kind of the momentum of them and the story. And there's all sorts of interesting things in this. I think there's sort of the ghoulishness and the fact that he needs to tell it, but also he's a really good storyteller. So whoever he chooses, I've got to tell you the story. You're the one who's going to listen to me now. Actually wants to, even though it's.
And that's how we chose scared. You, by the
way. But there's something interesting about. So there's stuff about a ghost ship with Death and her mate and dice games. There's stuff about Christianity, and so the thing that he learns and that brings him back home is he prayeth best who loveth best all things both great and small. For the dear God who loveth us, he made and loveth all. But then there's also a spirit underneath the boat that helps the boat move. So Coleridge was taking on all sorts of different kind of mythologies and traditions and stories and ideas. And I think that's quite interesting. Yeah.
And for anybody who's unfamiliar with Christian terminology, to shrieve is to give absolution after confession. To forgive somebody for the sins they've done.
Yeah.
Unshriven. Fantastic. Do you want to recommend?
Yes, it's 5 to recommend. And we'll put this in the description. You don't have to make notes while you're watching. So 5 further ballads that I would recommend are the following: Annabel Lee by Edgar Allan Poe. So all the ones that we've chosen have been either British or European tradition, but Edgar Allan Poe, if you want a different tradition and a different kind of ballad, Annabel Lee. One by John Keats, which isn't particularly long, La Belle Dame sans Merci. Despite the title, it is written in English, and it's one of those encounters between a human and a woman. It's not, you don't really find out, it's not graphic in how she has her wicked way, but there's an implication. Goody Blake and Harry Gill, I like those names. That's by William Wordsworth. And that's a story about a sort of supernatural, scary encounter that somebody has one evening. And then 2 others that also have a supernatural element to them, both Scottish ones, actually both by Robert Burns. So there's, one's Tam Lin. There's a version by Robert Burns, although the actual story is older than that. And that was also made into a film in 1970 with Ava Gardner and Ian McShane, who I was really surprised. When I read this, I was really surprised to find that Ian McShane had been in a film with Ava Gardner.
Must have been about 12.
Yeah, there's a picture. Yeah, so he was quite young, and she was presumably older. Yeah, interesting. And then also quite a lot of folk bands have put this ballad to music. Steel Ice Band, Fairport Convention, etc. And then, excuse me, Robert Burns, a very famous ballad by him called Tam O'Shanter, about a man who stays too late at a pub.
Always a mistake.
That's right, and then has visions of witches and warlocks on the way home. So we will put those in the description. Thank you very much for your time. I'm Ursula Wake.
And I'm Jon Atack, and you've been watching Lyrical Wax.
You have indeed. Bye.
Bye-bye.